Hey, my name is Mike, and this is a too long didn't read guide for Cenarius on normal and heroic. Nightmare brambles will fixate a random person and spawn roots on the ground. Try to kite these to the edge of the room. Throughout the entire fight, the boss will do forces of nightmare which spawn stuff on the ground. After 10 seconds, these will turn into ads. The thing that has the most people near it will be cleansed by Malfurion, turning it into a safe zone. Stepping into this safe zone will remove your stacks of creeping nightmares. Creeping nightmares is a permanent stacking dot put on you that increases throughout the entire fight. Cleansing yourself in these green zones will reduce the size of it and eventually make it disappear. So for that reason, you want to make sure that you go in and out immediately. You do not want to stand inside of it. As often as possible, you want to try to clear your stacks at around 25. So there's 4 different ads that may spawn through Forces of Nightmare. If Tormented Souls is not cleansed, then a bunch of wisps will spawn. These will fixate a random person. When they reach them, they'll do damage to anyone within 8 yards and then fixate a new player. Cleansing the souls will create more green puddles for you to clear your creeping nightmare stacks. If Corrupted Saplings are not cleansed, then a Nightmare Ancient will spawn. He does a raid-wide AoE stomp that deals damage split amongst everyone that's hit. If no one is hit by this, he'll do additional raid-wide AoE. If you do restore this, the Ancient will now periodically restore 3% mana per second to anyone that's close to him. If Corrupted Emerald Eggs are not cleansed, then a Rotten Drake will spawn. These face a random player and do a frontal cone. When they get low on health, they do a raid-wide AoE every 2 seconds, so you have to kill them quickly. If these eggs are cleansed, the drakes will put a buff on the tank that increases your healing received by 50%. It also makes the next attack that would kill you just remove the buff and heal you to 50% instead. If Corrupted Nature is not cleansed, then a Twisted Sister will spawn. They put a 6-second dot on people called Nightmare Javelin. If you have this, just move 4 yards away from people. It'll also put Scorn Touch on people, and if you have this, again move 8 yards away from people. Make sure to interrupt the Twisted Touch of Life or else it'll heal itself. If you do cleanse this, you'll now be immune to shadow damage in movement impairing effects. Your movement speed will also be increased. On normal, make sure to keep the ads 20 yards away from the boss and 30 yards on heroic. If they get too close, they'll start reflecting 50% of the damage you deal. At 30%, phase 2 will start. Bramble will still be going out. In this phase, Cenarius will hit the tank with Spear of Nightmares. This does a ton of damage and puts a stacking debuff on you that increases the damage you take from this spear by 100% for 25 seconds. Getting hit by this will spawn a shadow zone on the floor. The size of this is based on how much damage you take. For this phase, you'll want to kite the boss around every time you get hit by spear, and you'll probably want to tank swap on 1. He'll also root Malfurion. You'll need people to kill this root so that way Malfurion continues to spawn the green stuff for you to clear your creeping nightmare stacks. My group tanks Cenarius right where he stood. We tanked the ads on the opposite side of the room, trying to keep them close together as often as possible for AoE. If needed, we would stop DPS before 30% to kill any ads and then push the boss. At 30%, we used all of our offensive cooldowns and started kiting him around the room. Defensive cooldowns can be used for the stomp from the Ancient, whenever creeping nightmare stacks get too high, and on the tanks when they get Spear of Nightmare. That was a too long didn't read guide for Cenarius. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know down below in the comments. Thanks for watching. Have a terrific day.